On this episode of the OK Kiteboarder, let's discuss different points to consider when kiting in low winds. This is assuming that you have not yet begun kite foiling, which is a great option for light wind riding. I'm also excited because I just recently went out and gathered up some pro limit gear, which I first saw in Kite World magazine and also in Ben's Freestyle YouTube series. And I must say, this gear looks and feels so good that you've got to wonder whether or not it actually has some superpower abilities. Just as I had suspected, I went with the Predator wetsuit and the Vector harness, as well as the impact vest. I'll cover these products in future episodes in more detail, but just real quickly, how good is this Vector harness pin release system? All you do is pull away. Nothing to get stuck, nothing to squeeze, or a straitjacket escape trick to get out of. Let's start with gear choices for riding in light winds. Choosing the right setup for riding in light winds on a Twintip is paramount. A large board with a large surface area, but one with not a lot of weight, is a huge advantage. My personal preference is the Shin King G. It's 150 centimeters in length, but I would say even more importantly is its width at over 50 centimeters. It sometimes feels like you're cheating in light winds because it still has the agility of a smaller board, but it gives you all that surface area for light winds. Choosing the right LEI kite is also extremely important. A kite that is large but not too heavy, one that has a decent amount of pull, but when the winds get really light, it won't just fall out of the sky because of its overall weight. And to be honest, I currently don't have a large preference in kites in that 15 to 18 meter range. So please, if you don't mind commenting below so that we can see what your preferences are in leading edge inflatable kites for light wind riding conditions somewhere in that 15 to 18 meter range. I am about to venture into the world of foil water kites, and that will be new territory for me. I'm hoping that that's actually going to be my longer term answer, but I know that they have their drawbacks as well. Only time will tell. You can also add line extension to your current setup. That will give you a little more power within the kite, but understand that your kite will now turn a little more slowly because of the increased line length. But that is an easy modification to make in light winds. Some quick riding tips for light winds. You're going to ride with a more erect posture. Your hips are going to be more forward, shoulders back, a good tall posture when riding in light winds. So attempt to stay more on top of the board and less digging in on edge as you're riding along. And don't get overly aggressive with your upwind angles. With the kite, you want to keep it higher up in the wind window. This is also going to coincide with your board position in the water. The higher the kite, the more lift you will have, and ultimately the lighter you will be on your board, and therefore less drag on the water. Keep your kite signing when needed to keep power in your kite. You can still use your upwind riding skills so that you don't lose ground. But make sure first that you have significant enough energy in your kite to start directing your board upwind to reach your point of reference. On the water start, in light winds, remember now that your wind window is much smaller than it is on high wind day. Send the kite more downwind and lower in the power zone with your start. You'll need to push out on your kite and sheet out to send it more in this area of the zone. Expect to angle your board more downwind on your start, and don't get overly concerned at the very beginning on trying to turn it upwind. First of all, get enough speed and get on plane before being concerned about your upwind riding. If the winds are really light, even consider learning how to do a down loop start with your kite. If you're not yet proficient in transitions, then every change in direction is basically a new water start. Make sure that you keep your kite away from the edges of the wind window. What happens here is there's basically no wind, and the last thing you want to do is to power up when you're on the edges of the wind window. All this will do is choke your kite and it will fall out of the sky. So if you do get your kite out on the edge of the wind window in light winds, sheet out on your bar and bring that kite back overhead and keep the kite moving. Then quickly send it more downwind for another water start. Keeping your LEI static overhead in light winds is not the best position for it. Keep it moving until you're ready for that new water start. Concerning safety and planning, always know your outs. Always know what the downwind situation looks like if you start losing ground, or if the wind just completely dies. Don't panic when you are losing ground, and don't get overly aggressive in your attempt to ride upwind when the winds are very, very light. Be proficient in water self-rescue. If your kite falls out of the sky and there's not enough wind for it to relaunch on the water. If you do have a nice downwind bailout setup, then don't be too proud to walk it back upwind. Low wind kiting can easily be more difficult than kiting in high winds because of the efficiency and proficiency required from the kiter. Don't get frustrated with losing ground. Forget about the walk of shame. If you're able to walk the kite back upwind and take off again for a few more tacks, then that can be enjoyable kiting, especially as you're learning how to deal with light winds. Set yourself up with the right gear for the right conditions. Change your riding style on the Twintip board when you're riding in light winds, and be cognizant to the changes in the wind window on those light wind riding days. Thanks for watching. Reach out to Green Hat Kiteboarding for all your kiteboarding needs, and like, comment, and subscribe. Winter is set in here in Oklahoma, so until next time.